good. As you can see from our update, we've just have a lot of new things going on. It was interesting to hear some of the perspectives of the principals tonight about content specialists and some of our new COGAP programming. We're upping our identification of kind of gifted students and going to be providing more, working very diligently on providing more direct student instruction on that, and we're doing that through some pullouts and also working with teachers and building little pull-out groups within the class during like center time and things like that. So Rita's been working hard on getting students identified, and that's just going to be a push that we'll talk more about over the next year. And a lot of that, year one was kind of this year where we started to do all the testing. The next year, we continue to build on the programming. So it's a pretty lofty initiative, but we really felt like that's something that's been underserved is our gifted population. You know, we always focus on remediation and sometimes fail to really think about the pulling out and really celebrating the gifted students. So that's something that we're really working hard on. Some of that feedback came from our parent meetings last fall when we had the strategic planning. It was already in place that we were starting to have those conversations, but it felt good that we could, talk to that parent, and that was really, interested in that topic and have some dedicated feedback and some real life initiatives going in place to address that. So we're excited about that. So also in terms of curriculum, you can kind of see there, we're meeting this Friday and with our triple threat team. We'll have a morning, maybe a little bit the afternoon, but our K-8 or K-6 initiative will be talking about Fontes and Pinnell, and that's a program that's used in that literacy block. Again, the state says you need 90 minutes a day, and in a lot of cases we're from 90 minutes to 120 minutes with our new scheduling that we have. And so there's just a lot of new things going on in terms of curriculum this year. So we're going to be doing a lot of training of our principals, our teachers, and then our Title I people to really work hard on those initiatives, especially in literacy and science. And that was, as you remember, we talked about that earlier. One of the reasons that we were so interested in the science aspect of it was that our principals not only were going to teach science, but they were going to use that as their kind of some reading content too. So that was going to be one of the foundational pieces of the literacy program. So that made it even more of a no-brainer in terms of getting our kids that exposure to science, but also using that in a reading time. So we kind of killed two birds with one stone in that case. So we're very excited to see where the data comes out with our students, and then that focused math instruction with our content specialists. If you remember, we talked about using student data and teacher data and finding teachers that were really interested in teaching these specific content areas, but also looking at the data to seeing what the data backs up as what their strongest area is. With any teacher, my strength was science. You know, as an elementary teacher, we make them teach everything, and that's just kind of doing a disservice to our kids and to our young teachers. So we're just excited about kind of the new initiatives, and we're learning as we go this year. So a lot of professional development. Absolutely.
I'm sure we don't, we're fairly new into it. But if they happen to have, for one of their blocks, if they happen to have a teacher that goes and does evaluations, say, that's out of the classroom.
Like a mentor teacher.
Pardon me?
Like a mentor.
A mentor teacher,
okay.
Right. Do they always have them the same person that comes in, or is it during the same block?
I think our principals kind of address that. Each building does a little bit differently in who they provide for that time, but anybody like to kind of maybe comment on that, how that works in your building?
Yeah, ours at Front Park, it's as long as the other gal is there, it's always the same release person, and it's always the same day and time. Now that there will be exceptions to that rule, but that is our normal plan. That way the release teacher gets familiar with the routines, what's expected during that chunk on that day, and they really partner to have the plans. We did, I think at Central as well, kind of a gradual release of that release time. So the teacher modeled
Okay.
So
So it should be, they really shouldn't notice any, the kids shouldn't notice any
More
difference.
of like a team teaching model. Or
Pardon?
team teaching or co-teaching model versus like a sub. So the students look at the person coming in. It's
Okay.
just, this is my, for us, it's Thursday, this is my Thursday morning teacher.
Okay,
Every Thursday morning, same teacher.
thank you.
Another thing is a motion within our curriculum update. Each year, the state requires us to adopt the teacher appreciation grant policy. This year is the same as last year, but we still need to have it approved by the board. And what we do is, as you know, our teachers are rated based on our career development model. And there are 2 areas that receive money through this teacher appreciation grant. And those are teachers that are rated as highly effective, and those are rated as effective. That's hard for me to say. So highly effective and effective teachers receive part of this teacher appreciation grant. The way that the law requires is that it has to be at least 25% more of this pot. So when you think of this pot, you're going to divide it into the teachers that are highly effective and those that are effective. And the teacher that's highly effective will receive 25% more than a teacher that was rated as effective. So that's kind of how we've set it up. And so as a result of that, we have to have the board approve that policy. But this was the same policy that was in place last year. So part of that is that each year it has to be approved.
All right, could we go ahead then and get a motion to approve the teacher appreciation grant?
I move.
Second.
Jill? Rick, okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Gotta be quick on the draw.
Okay, let's move on to Community Relations and Education Foundation update.
Great, you've seen this. We're gearing up for the Beach Grove Promoters Fall Festival this weekend, so our booth is going to look a little bit different this year. Rita Bass has had some good ideas about, so hopefully that will help bring in some more people to come into the booth. And so we're excited about that, and we'll have a chance for our families to win memberships to like Children's Museum and State Museum and other things. So I think that's going to be a great thing. So thank you for those of you who are able to volunteer, and we will see you there, and maybe you'll see the floats and the parade on Saturday morning too. So I wanted to update you on Safety is Priceless Fund, which I'm taking some of your information. I'm taking some of your high school stuff.
Go for it.
Because I promote it, so that's why I'm doing it. But Safety is Priceless, Alyssa Hockett, the fund actually now has over $5,000 in it. And actually about $3,500 was raised through our Alumni Association. So that's pretty impressive. So that was exciting to be able to report. Our next Beach Grove High School football game is going to be a gray out, as I think you've probably seen in the Hornet Blast. So anybody has Standing Tall Together or just wants to wear a gray shirt would be great in support of Coach English. And also the elementary students are going to be there. They're going to be in the cheer clinic. And the middle school cheerleaders are also joining in that game. So it's going to be quite a wonderful game. Then Save the Data course for Greece at the high school. That has been very, very popular. And I meant to tell you, Mrs. Walters, on Facebook, we got 2 of the original cast members when the high school did it years and years ago that said they were going to come attend. So I'll make sure I give you their names. So I think that was exciting. And then the Community Service Day is October 3rd for high school students too. So the high school has a lot going on here soon. So for the Education Foundation, I'm going to be attending the Indiana Association of Public Education Foundation's annual conference this Thursday. So that's what I'll be doing. And then I would like to ask if, today we celebrate the 17th anniversary of 9/11, which is Patriots Day. I wondered if all of you would join me in just a quick moment of silence. Thank you very much. There were a lot of brave people that day.
Yes, thank you, Melody. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to minutes. We need a motion to approve the minutes for August 14th, the regular meeting and the work session.
So moved.
Thank you, Beth. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Janice. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to claims, we need a motion to approve the claims for September.
I'll make a motion to approve the claims for September.
Thank you, Rick. And a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I don't think we have any public comment on the agenda this evening, so let's move into our business update. Dr. Keeley, do you want us to go ahead and start with the motions?
Well, we'll just do one motion to open
Okay.
and I'll present,
Okay.
and then you can close each one.
I'll make a
I
motion
move
to
we-
open the 2019
Thank
budget
you.
hearing.
Open the budget hearing.
How about Rick, you open, and Beth, you'll
That's fine.
second it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried. We're ready.
On the screen, I did create a PowerPoint that is 24 slides long, but I will go quickly through it. I did want to be thorough and give you the information in print. Since House Bill 1009 was passed in February of 2017 and then refined again and updated in 2018, all the funds and everything we've discussed in the past are tweaked, but it's not a bad thing. So what I've done is I've put the real funds in larger bold type, and the ones that are disappearing, going away for 2019 will be the general fund, and will be replaced by the education fund. And then, of course, we keep our debt service as normal. That's our mortgage payment, and the pension debt was from 2002. Below that, capital projects, transportation, and bus replacement have been consolidated into a fund called operations. So later on, I will explain how we had the challenge to consolidate the entire tax rate of 3 of those together to put the advertised tax rate into the operations fund. And then the expenditures are that same rationale. Underneath that is the referendum regular operations fund, and then the band edition referendum debt fund is at the bottom. Any questions on the general outline of the funds? We do fund accounting in the state of Indiana, as you know, and so it's not an accrual type of situation, so it's a little bit different, but a little bit easier to understand, in my opinion. So the education fund, which was the general fund, is now a $23 million fund. It would have been a little bit more than that. And its number changed from 0100 to 0101. Basically, the education fund will now be teachers, property casualty, teacher, health insurance, technology, supplies, everything you can ever imagine to run the classroom. And a little bit later, I'll show you that the operations fund took over some of the administrative costs and other overhead. So it's been separated from that, to the tune of about $1.5 million, which later on you'll see we were already spending those dollars outside of, because we didn't have revenue for those kind of things anyway. So basically the revenue comes in from tuition support, which is based specifically on students on this Friday. So that's the average daily, the ADM, so the average daily membership, there you go. And then and that'll be 99% of our dollars by far, so approximately $6,000 times every student. The complexity grant does bring in about $3.5 million, and then the academic honors, special ed, vocational ed, prime time, and the kindergarten was added to this entire very long mathematical problem to create the revenue. And then there's some miscellaneous revenue that we get, but it's very minuscule. So here's a comparison of 17-18 to 18-19, and these are the dollars that we anticipate. So 13.8 million, and then tuition support total was 15.7 million. You add all the things together, and we get approximately $21.6 million. We will have a cash balance, I anticipate, for January 1, and because of that, I did put the budget to $23 million. So here's just a quick reminder. Yeah.
Can you tell me, or us, the difference in the total general fund we have this year versus last year?
It is approximately, I would say, 200. It'll be approximately, it would be if we had the exact same 3,200 ADM, okay? Because it has to be based on specific students. It would be approximately $500,000 more money if we have 3,200 students. And that is because this just the general fund budget and the General Assembly gave us an increase of approximately 3%.
Oh, okay.
But every single thing is based on the dollar this Friday, on the student count. So if you go up 100 kids, we would have $1.1 million.
Bring your kids to school.
Bring your kids to school, that's right. Have
At
them
least
enrolled.
on Friday, right?
So, and out of those dollars, so we run about $23 million. 23.5 is our baseline, okay? Out of that $23 million, I do want to remind you that transportation, utilities, maintenance, property, casualty insurance, computers, and network. We have been spending about $1.5 million, $1.3 million to $1.5 million every single year out of our student money, out of our general fund. Going on this next year, we're still going to have to carve those things out, but we're going to move the dollars actually financially on a monthly or quarterly basis. We'll move the money when it's deposited into the education fund. We'll ask to move approximately, in 12 different installments, $150,000 a month to the operations fund and then spend it in the next ensuing month. Because you're not allowed by law to spend any of these things inside the education fund. We used to have, by law, the ability to kind of spend these things in the general fund. But House Bill 1009 said, no, we want it separated. We want to know what you're spending your money on. And we want to know how much you're spending on students. And so
It's all tracking. That's
They-
what they want. They want to track it differently.
And then they want to be able to compare school system to school system to see what kind of percentage dollars are you really dedicating just in the classroom. However, my opinion, and maybe you share the same opinion, all of these things help run our entire school system for all kids. Transportation, utilities, can't have class without the lights on, right? So it's kind of interesting, whatever, why they're doing it, I'm not completely sure, but we'll follow the law. So, any other questions about the education fund? Later on, when I get into the budget specific, you'll see the movement of those dollars. Debt service fund, really simple, long-term debt, technology and textbook fees that are not collected are reimbursed in there to us through the taxes. The debt service fund in 2018, this current year, was $1.92. That was what we were actually advertised in the budget. And I used to use, on the far left side, you'll see the assessed valuation labeled the AV. I used to really lower that dollar amount because it was so unpredictable. It was fluctuating in 2010 and 2012 and 2014 that I didn't want to overshoot the AV and not get a high enough tax rate because we need $7 million. At the end of the day, I need the $7 million, so it's a mathematical formula. But because the assessed valuation has been very consistent for the last 3 consecutive years, it's at about $414 million, and I feel like it's not going to go down. I felt like I could shoot for $410 million, which is very close to $414 million. And I feel pretty secure with that because of the way they assess and they set assessed valuations now. It's on a rolling average and it's much more consistent. So by bringing up the AV, I was able to lower the advertised tax rate by 21 cents, which is more of a realistic tax rate. Unfortunately, even though this is a protected levy, we still do not raise enough money on the tax base to bring in the entire $7 million. We're only allowed to, or we only actually net $5.4 million. We're one of the only school corporations in the state of Indiana that loses $1 million in their debt service because of circuit breaker. So it is what it is. So as you can see, the net levy I estimate to be very close to the same as this year, which is about $5.4 million. When we pay all of our bills, we're still able to transfer that $500,000 over to the operations fund. so that we can spend those dollars on our summer projects. And that's what we've traditionally done. So the red is the 1.6 million. At the bottom is red because that's the explanation. Tax credits provide less dollars. So that when somebody sees their tax bill, they see all of these discounts. Well, all of those discounts is what lowers our net revenue. Referendum debt is very similar to the same, except it was very specific and it was a question on a ballot. Again, the AV, I was able to get closer to the actual AV. The AV here is different because the AV is outside of the circuit breaker. Inside of the circuit breaker, you have a net assessed valuation. This is called a gross assessed valuation, gross AV, and it's $448 million. And so, in realistic numbers. And so last year, I was still kind of playing on that low AV number, and so I set the tax rate at $1.16. By law, this one you don't have to worry about where we set the tax rate because when it was voted on, we voted on no more than 15 cents. So all I had to do in my math was make sure that I had 15 cents there or higher. And then the DLGF will cut it to 15 cents. The nice thing about this fund is that we do not lose dollars in it, and so the net levy will produce enough money to pay our bills.
One other thing, the difference in the AV here is the TIF district. So when you have a referendum, we gain all of the AV.
And all the TIF districts is added to our base gross, and this is the gross AV now.
So that's, that's an advantage when we look at referendums and construction projects. If we did a regular construction project in debt service, we were not going to gain all that AV. Right. So that's a positive from that standpoint. In some districts, that difference in AV and TIF is multi-millions of dollars. If you go Carmel, Noblesville, those, I mean, they're...
The Airport Authority in Wayne Township is
huge.
In Decatur, the northwest corner.
Huge
it's
differences.
Millions of dollars because they tip that whole zone to make, the wonderful airport that we have.
So that's why you see such a large difference in there. The TIF also goes into that.
So the pension debt, it will remain the same in the numbers, and it will be very similar to the debt service. Again, the AV 380, I went with 410. Pension debt is very similar to the referendum debt in terms of dollars, just because the budget is very similar to that. So as you can see, again, the rate from what we advertised in 18 to what we are advertising for 19, it goes down another penny there. Again, that one is another one that we lose dollars, $175,000, so we lose about 30% of that one as well. So now here's the operation fund, and it takes care of all the things that you saw that were paid for out of the general fund. It also takes care of buses, transportation, 5% of it can be sports facilities, but mainly maintenance and technology come out of here. We'll also pay bus drivers, not just buses themselves, but also bus driver salaries could be paid out of here. So as you can see, I added 3 tax rates together. CPF, of course, was the largest. Transportation was the next, and then bus. Add them all together for $2.8 million, or 73 cents was what we advertised a year ago. When I added all those together, I did another realistic AV at 410. I came up with 66 cents, or a reduction of about 7 cents. So every fund I was able to advertise a lower tax rate, just by being a little bit more realistic in the assessed valuation. So I'm not gaining anything, because as you can see, at the bottom of the day, at the end of the day, we get $0. So, however, we will transfer $2.2 million from the education fund. We did a thorough analysis of all the dollars spent on all the account lines, and I do want to give props to Kathy Statzer. She did a crosswalk of all the account lines from the education fund that would have to be paid for over here in the operations fund. And we took all of those numbers and we crunched them together, and we came up with $2,202,000. So that is the amount of money I anticipate doing the transfer, so. In 12 easy installments, that's right.
If we act now.
If we act in January. And that'll, so you're gonna see that as a theme every month. I'll be telling you, this is how much we spent. And so I may have it more of on a reimbursement basis than on a preemptive, loading it with dollars. Not sure right now. But it'll be a monthly occurrence. But the operations fund, at the end of the day, gets 2.2 million, and then we also will be able to transfer that debt service money I talked about earlier, the $500,000, so that we can spend almost $3 million in here, or 2.804, or no, what did I advertise? I advertised 2,738,261. So we'll make sure that we put enough revenue in there to spend 2,738,000, because that's what we advertised. Okay, and that's what'll go out of there. We do our lease payment for the buses that you're familiar with. We talked about the gas buses that we have now. And then referendum fund 0160 is still alive and well, and it has 4 more years, or maybe 5 more years, 5 more years. And really, it's the catch-all. And we approximately get $1.6 million in there. Again, this is outside of the tax cap, so I used gross AV. Circuit breaker loss is 0, so we do net those dollars. We do have cash balance in there at the end of the year, and we'll also have a debt service transfer of specific we redid some bonds 2 years or 3 years ago, and we gained some revenue. So the actual advertised dollar amount is $3,257,267.
What is our loss from TIF districts in Beech Grove?
The loss would be the tax rate times $38 million of AV. So you'd have to take the $2, I would say about, on an annual basis, if our AV, if it's $38 million TIF AV,
Tom, I have that data.
it'd
I-
probably,
I
it'd
can
be
send it
about
to you.
$85,000.
Actually, it's going to be a little bit higher than that. If Aaron and I met with Mr. Price, and we asked Bill Sheldrick to do a study for the school corporation, not for the RDC. And I've got some data I can share with you. I wouldn't do it tonight because we've got enough on here,
It's
but
plenty
we'll come
complex.
back at the next meeting when it's a little bit shorter, because I think it'd be interesting going through that study. So what's really good about it in a nutshell, and I learned this and Aaron learned it too when we met with them, when that 20-year TIF goes off, they can renew it, but it starts fresh where the AV is.
With the current AV.
With the current AV.
Right.
And I didn't realize that. That's a huge plus for us. And there's a nice chunk of change when that goes off that automatically will come back to us.
What year is that, do we know?
It-
28, maybe?
Yeah, 2028. And I talked to Jane Hurden today, our bond counselor. I was telling her about that. She said that will help us in a reference when we get our letter, our grade and everything else. So that's positive. And so I can share that with you. But again, I wasn't going to do it tonight just because everything else. But I can email it out to you with some explanation.
Can you find out where exactly the TIF districts are? I know it's a large.
We've got that. We got a
Yeah,
map.
okay.
We got a map that, for those who are on the board, Bill Sheldrake did for us about 6 or 7 years
Yeah,
ago.
it's been a while.
It hasn't changed. So I can include that. I'll just send you a little package on TIF. Then I've got about 30 pages if you're really interested on TIF districts you can read.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't advise it unless you want to fall asleep. So,
Tom, the referendum fund that we just,
Correct.
which is our first referendum,
That was renewed.
right, that,
It's operating.
It's an operating revenue.
that, we'll transfer that to the operating?
No,
Or
no,
is
no.
that- or
No,
is
there's
that-
two different budgets. Yeah, there's an operations fund budget, and
Right.
that'll spend the education dollars. Referendum fund will have the revenue straight from this tax rate and from some debt service. We restructured 2 bonds. Those bonds are in there, in that revenue,
Right,
to populate over here so that we can run. Without this, we wouldn't have $1 million transportation department.
Right.
We wouldn't be able to do repairs, we wouldn't be able to buy gas. This has really been the mainstay of our transportation world. So
Right.
yeah, so those are gonna be two
Well,
very
that's what
separate.
was advertised when we did it the first time.
Right, and that's what it's been,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So this is some miscellaneous tax revenue that populates into every one. It's license, excise, FIT, and CVET. Those dollars come to about this much money. And the operations fund is increased dramatically because the bus, the transportation, the capital is all squished together, added together for $140,000. So this is, about $650,000 of additional income outside of just the property taxes that come in. Partially because we have 465 that runs through here, and banking and finance in Marion County is pretty lucrative, so it actually ends up being a good extra income piece. We never plan on these dollars. We never plan on these dollars in the budget to spend at 100% because number one, they fluctuate and they could be different. And number two, if anything else happens in the assessed value or the tax rate anomaly in the past, this has saved us, keeping us in the black and instead of going into the red. So I don't build these dollars into spending them at 100%. So at the end of the day, this is the last slide. The education fund is $23 million. Debt service is 5.4. Operations fund, as far as an expenditure of budget, we won't really have revenue. And these are revenue dollars. These aren't budgeted expenditure dollars. As you'll see, operations, CPF, transportation, and bus will receive $0.
Because we're gonna transfer to some $1 million.
No, the operations fund will just have transfer dollars.
Okay.
It won't, and so out of that 23 million in the education fund, we'll transfer $2.2 million down there. So this is really the revenue picture. And then next year, you're gonna see out of the 5.4 million, 1.6 million will drop down to the referendum fund to make that a 3.2 million. And 2.2 million will drop down from education into the operations. So I didn't want to put that we actually would anticipate receiving any revenue in those other ones, because we won't. So then I advertised, and this was in the on Gateway and in the newspaper. So everything went a little bit different. Instead of going into the regular newspaper, this one went into an online advertisement opportunity called Gateway, and we posted that prior to September 1st online, and did that as statute requires.
We don't have to post it in the starting one?
We don't have to post this one. We did put the bus replacement and the CPF, or the capital projects plan notice. So no, yeah, this was 3 times more expensive than those small snippets, because it's really very long. So I have a 72-page PDF, as well as the 27-page CPF plan and a 4-page bus replacement plan. So if you'd like to come by any day, we could walk through it and talk about it. There's all kinds of fun stuff in there. This took about 3 months, and it's nice. It's all buttoned up nice, I think.
Only you would be excited about that.
It's, you know what? All it is when you cross that line and it's done, life is good. That's what it is.
For another year.
For another year. But you know what? Maybe the things won't change next year. So
How often do things change as far as laws?
Yeah, so when I first was hired in 2008, all of those funds that you saw, 0100, were brand new to me in 2008. And everybody else was retiring and squawking and saying, this is crazy, and I'm like, I didn't know any different. So I was on the front end of a complete brand new budget. So now we're 10 years exactly, and they decided to revamp the whole thing. So there's anomalies every 2 years. There is a change, little blips, but about every 10 years they're going to revamp the whole cycle.
How difficult is it to keep track of that? Because it's a lot for you and Dr. Kaiser to keep track of.
Yeah, but the Indiana Association of School Business Officials, IASBO, I probably went to 15 different half-day or full-day meetings between February and today. House Bill 1009 was thoroughly vetted by attorneys and bond counsel and the people that Dr. Kaiser was talking about. So they give us a ton of support. So it's really nice.
It also, so Tom and I teach this to Indiana State, so it forces to keep up on some of the little details. So I'm already thinking my PowerPoints for this spring are gonna have to change because of these changes, but,
It seems to me, though, it makes a lot more sense, the way they've recategorized it. Things
Education.
kind of fit underneath
Mhm.
their subject matter and their categories a lot more
Yep.
logical.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I don't disagree. There were some arguments in the creation of that and then the tweaking of it because they wanted to put all coaching stipends in the operations fund because they said that's not the classroom. Well, there was a lot of banter back and forth and they settled on coaching stipends and salaries being in the education fund. So I think that there were a lot of listening, a lot of talking, a lot of listening. So both sides really worked hard at it. So I think it's got a pretty good mix right now.
What we've heard from a revenue standpoint is, this is a budget year, and the governor is very on board with being as transparent as possible and making things as easier to understand as possible. And I do think that there will be some positive for education funding to come out of this session.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
Education.
But you did say a 3% revenue gain from last year?
On the base dollar amount per student.
Per student base,
But, yeah.
which is sort of the majority of which is the big bulk of the funding. Right?
It is, however, it's all dependent on the number of kids on Friday that are.
And I'll go through that when we go through ADM a little bit. I can lay that out for you.
Right.
There's a handout on your desk we'll go through very quickly.
It is this Friday.
Are we ready?
I need a motion.
Okay, can I get a motion then to close the 2019 budget hearing? Thank you, Beth. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Rick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Let's move on then to the bus replacement hearing. We need a motion to open the 2019 bus replacement plan hearing.
I move we open it.
Thank you, Jill. And a second? Janice, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Go ahead.
Bus replacement, pretty simplistic. It was posted in the newspaper, 2 different newspapers, one time by statute. Basically, it's a 12-year plan, and we estimate approximately $595,000 if we were to be able to receipt all the revenue. We would buy 3 new buses and pay for 8 lease bills that we have. And then it goes from 2019 to 2023 specifically in the dollars. We do own 36 buses now. Might be surprising because that's we started out, when I started, it was 28. So we're up to 36 buses now. If we were able to receive revenue, then we would replace 3 every single year. But we do not receive $595,000 to be able to do that. So Dr. Bear and I wrestle monthly to find out who's going to buy a used bus or to keep talking about our plan. But I will remind you, our plan has always been every 5 years, we want to look at 10 new buses. We talked about that for 2 consecutive years, and we're still committed to that. Is that correct?
I'd actually even like to do it earlier.
You have to win the wrestling match. So you need to start working out, right?
How old is our oldest bus?
About 12 years, 12, 13 years.
No, we have one, 15.
Mid-2000s?
Yeah.
We have 15 buses that are over 10
12
years
years.
old.
Over 10 years.
I think 2010 and newer, we can use them for Hoover.
There you go.
Big little extra
So
trash.
what's the bus that's sitting outside the gate here over by the football practice field? There's one, whenever I go to pick up Nathan, there's one that's over in the gravel by the football field that never seems to be
It's
pulled.
probably the spare.
Is
'Cause
it?
we don't have a garage. Like, we have a garage
Right.
to do ongoing things, but we do have one spare.
Okay, so is that the, because it just like showed up there.
probably the spare.
I was like,
I don't-
wonder why that bus never
don't know, to be honest with you.
moves. So,
Are we just like everybody else still struggling for bus drivers?
Yeah, we just got a new one today.
Yeah.
Moved up from a monitor to a driver.
Was it a local hire or was it from the pool of people that we?
It
hired?
was from just a pool that we trained over the summer. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll make them a monitor as they're going through the training. The training can be 2 to 3 months. And in many cases. So if you don't have bus drivers in waiting, it'd be 3 years from somebody, or 3 months from somebody who walked in the door. So it's not easy to get a bus driver. So when you have them, when you have people that are in training, it's very positive. So we had a couple this summer that are not employed anymore, and that used up 2 of our sub-drivers. So we're down to 0 drivers in the way. All of our routes had drivers and no extras. So this one today helps now that we have an extra. And so they're considered a sub-driver, and they come in, and if somebody's gone, they take their route. But if a route opens, then they're kind of in waiting.
I don't want to misspeak if anybody asks, but what are we up to now for a beginner driver per day?
I think it's 78
78.
a day. I think it's 78. I don't. Because we bumped it up, am I right?
Yeah, we did just bump it up, I thought.
Correct.
So what?
It may be 75. I think it's 75 or 78 a day.
Ish.
Yeah, it's ish.
So I know we'll probably bring this up in the personnel
it was
update since.
It's actually 81
Since Rick brought it up.
Better.
at the
So
top.
are all the people, the bus drivers that exited with that personnel report that Dr. Keeley posted, were those ones that were lost over the summer? Because there were like 9 drivers on that personnel report that are suddenly gone. I mean, is that accumulation from over the summer, or is
I'd
that?
have to look at the exact names on them to tell you, to answer that question.
Okay.
Yeah, there were numerous reasons why some had new occupations and moved on. I don't remember that many being gone though, off the top of my head.
There
I
were,
was thinking-
maybe it was, I mean, it was more than just 1 or 2. It
Were they
was
just
like-
were they specifically drivers or monitors also? Because we had monitors as well.
It doesn't.
It says bus driver / monitor.
Okay, so that could have
what
been
it
monitors
said
also.
on
Mine
there, but I
sounds
mean, there
about
was-
right from June 1 to today. That sounds about right.
Okay, because there wasn't any on, we didn't really have personnel reports over the summer, so.
Well, they don't typically work over the summer, so
Right.
a lot of times we'll find out at the beginning of the school year, well, I'm not coming back.
Okay, and if so,
Right.
that makes sense. There
Rick,
was
we
a
started
chunk
at
of,
73.
there were several
$73
bus
a
drivers on
day.
that list.
And we
or
top
bus
out at
drivers /
91.
monitors.
A good
that,
number of
Based
them
on
are
experience.
monitors, though.
that were suddenly not there, which prompted my
Because-
question,
yeah.
do we have enough people to drive the buses?
Oh, okay, yeah.
So-
We can
There's the
change that
70
report
for
so
tier
that we
one,
know
right.
what exactly
And
what
they
they
go
are.
up to
We'll do that.
75.
Okay, because to me, it looked like they
They're
all
supposed to
left
go up to
on the same.
70.
Those are not all drivers.
Yeah, based
Okay,
on experience.
it's just suddenly that we had a whole bunch of bus people.
We'll label them monitor or driver specifically so that they.
Okay.
I think only about 3 of those were drivers.
Okay, but there are several on that list.
One went in and one went out real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, we had one for one
Like a
day.
one-day turnaround.
Oh, no, that was a teacher's aide at South Grove that came on and then came out real quick.
I thought it was.
We had an aide,
Yeah.
a bus monitor did the same thing.
Yeah, okay.
So,
So how much do we have to pay then for the bus replacement? Did I see a number of
$178,000 is in the operations fund budgeted there.
178?
For this plan, that portion, unfortunately, we won't net the revenue from tax rate and operations, but we'll have money to spend on $178,000.
So we need a motion to close the 2019 bus replacement plan hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Beth. Second, was that Janice? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now we need a motion to adopt the 2019 bus replacement plan.
I'll make a motion to adopt the 2019 bus replacement plan.
Thank you, Rick. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, April. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Let's move on to capital projects. We need a motion to open the 2019 capital projects plan hearing.
I move we open
Thank you,
the
Beth.
project.
And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Janice. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Let's go ahead and, do you want to?
There's just a summary on the screen, and basically, the capital projects plan has every single location and talks about any improvements that we would like to do. Every one of the locations also talks about historical additions and roof projects and things like that. I have put in to Central and Middle School our conversations about redoing roofs and other things along there. That summary that is on the screen, the yellow, actually is indicating that we won't receive tax revenue, but then below it, it has, because it has the tax caps actually withdrawn from the mathematical formula, and then it has an other revenue, and I added the $2.2 million into the other revenue. So these all work together. So the capital projects plan is actually a subsection underneath the operations fund. So that was advertised appropriately as well before September 1st, one time in 2 papers as statute asks, and then it was thoroughly vetted and posted on Gateway as well. Any questions about capital projects? And we put our assets in here too, so this is kind of an inventory list of all of our buses and everything that costs.
Tom, let's make these available. The board doesn't have these documents,
Oh, okay.
so let's make them available through an email. So they, yeah, all the things we talked about for those.
Speaking of capital projects, how did our schools fare over the rainy weekend?
Well, we didn't have a crisis on Monday morning, so I think we did pretty well.
They're all smiling.
I was saying,
They're all
they're not a
smiling.
bucket
That's
or
great.
anything, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think
Nice
we-
job.
Or they're used to it, one or the other.
Nice job, Steve.
Yeah, I think they're used to it, yeah.
It's all because of you and your great plan. Good job.
Thank you. I'll even have some comments about that in our operations update. Big things happening.
So we need a motion to close the 2019 capital projects plan hearing.
I move to close the hearing.
Thank you, Beth. And a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Aaron. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now we need a motion to adopt the 2019 capital projects plan. Thank you, April. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And all budget documents, resolutions, everything will be, for the budget will be considered for approval next month on the 2nd. And at that time, I'll have all the little stickers on where to sign everything, if so you choose to approve the budget and the plan and road plans. Okay.
The next piece is the personnel update. I know there were some questions, but I think we might have fielded all of those. Did we have any others before we move on to a motion? Okay. So we need a motion to approve the employment recommendations as listed with the salary changes.
Employment recommendations as listed with salary changes or amounts listed.
Thank you, Beth. Could we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Let's move on to our operations update. Do you want to give us some information?
Well, yeah, as you can see there, transportation, we do have our fall bus inspection. Bus inspections take place twice a year for buses over 10 years old, so we have 15 of those, so almost half of our fleet. And so they're, you know, Mr. Kinder he does all of our Versatrans, our bus stop monitoring, our trips, but he also helps out very heavily when it comes to inspection time. There are a lot of things that him and Tracy do. So they're out there working on that now, and the inspector should be probably coming by within the next 2 weeks. So it's a little bit of stressful time over in transportation right now. Also, just wanted to update you on the operations, and I think you might get some questions about this. We are going to be getting our Central Elementary kind of renovation. We are going to be starting our roof project in October over fall break. So for that 2 weeks of fall break, you'll see some equipment there. You'll see people up on top of the roof. You'll see a lot of different things. They're going to work hard to keep those things up on top of the roof to kind of keep them away from the public eye, and for safety reasons and for security reasons of the materials. But you may see some dumpsters and some extra noise around fall break. So that's with the roof. With the windows, we also have some part of this central project is some window repairs and renovations on some leaky areas. a lot of brickwork, new windows, and just trying to tidy those up. I think there were 14 windows that were identified, if I remember, Mr. Buckler, that are going to have that renovation done. They may be starting as soon as this week or beginning of next week. And they will not be working during the school day. Or actually, I will say, they won't be grinding during the school day. So probably, and they've worked with the mayor on the downtime, like what the quiet time is. But they will probably be working from about 3 to whenever they need to shut down on grinding. And part of OSHA, with that silica dust from the concrete, are vacuum, so there will be some kind of maybe some loud vacuum machines that are part of the system that these guys are wearing. So there'll be a lot of grinding of the lintel above the window and the brickwork to make those repairs. So if anybody comes to you and says, what is all the noise over at Central, that's what's going on.
But they'll come to the library and they'll ask
Exactly.
about
Yeah,
all
they'll
the
ask
noises
you.
over at Central, and I'll
Yeah.
explain it to them. Also, on a heads up with that, the library is starting their renovation October 1st as well.
Okay.
So I'm not exactly sure yet. Liz, the current branch manager, leaves at the end of September. We're in the process of hiring and interviewing for her replacement, but we're not quite
Okay.
sure how long that's going to take. So I will, in the interim, be grown up in charge there. So we will be dealing with the construction crews and stuff like that. I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like yet, but I'll make sure it's the best to reach out to you to let you
Yes.
know.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Mr. Buckler, if people come and say we have things and you're like, that's not roof stuff, send them over to us.
Yeah, and I think,
Good to know what it is.
Yeah.
during the school day, there should be very limited construction on our campus, and there shouldn't be trucks, because they.
And I don't know what it's gonna look like
Okay.
for us either, because it's an internal construction project as well. So they're probably not gonna want lots of huge amounts of things happening
Okay.
during the day inside the building that are gonna interrupt patrons being able, because it's mostly that cafe area, and lowering all the shelters, it's gonna give us visibility.
Yeah.
Hey,
Good.
and all of that stuff, so.
just keep us updated
But
on
it's
that.
happening in the same time frame. So.
As I said, and Mr. Buckler was not at this meeting, but Ms. Hackman was, they will be grinding, taking out brick at night, but during the day they may come and actually work on some brickwork and things that they'll be quiet and it'll be outside. They will not be in the building. So things that will not disrupt the school day. But the things that would disrupt the school day, the hammering, the grinding will take place late afternoon and early evening. So
I'll just let library staff know
Perfect.
that once we'll have our complainers, but it's
Yep.
an easy enough thing. But it's mostly gonna take place over fall break, so it should be a 2-week window
For the roof.
sort of thing. Perfect.
the windows start anytime and will go through fall break.
Okay, so we're looking at a month.
Correct.
That's fine.
That is our hope.
I can manage that.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I think that's it for operations in terms of updates. I do have one motion. If you remember last month, we talked about the interest in moving forward with the ALICE training for kind of a shooter incident or an intruder incident. We did a lot of research on that, and a lot of the districts around us use this because it is, as you'll remember, very oriented towards specific grade levels. The training is very grade level specific, so we felt this was the one that would help us consolidate and have the most effective and efficient process of dealing with intruders in our building. So we're just hoping tonight that we could get a motion to approve that, as we would like to start beginning the training and getting our staff started. We have about 4 to 5 that we will send out in October to start training. And there's a training in the state, in the city actually, in the next couple weeks, and the rest of them are kind of throughout the country. So again, we're just asking that the board approve that us as a district move forward with the ALICE training as our method to deal with active shooters and intruders in our buildings.
Before we move forward, I want to caution everybody that Project Alice was the Umbrella Corporation's project for Resident Evil.
So we're gonna have zombies.
So that's my zombie nerd thing right there.
I'm not sure those two are connected or correlate, but But it
I
sounds
would
good.
move.
You know what? That's what Umbrella Corporation said.
Okay.
There's a lot of active shooting in there.
I'll second the motion that Beth started.
Okay, so thank you, Beth. Thank you, Ricky. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Okay. Now we need to move on to other business. We need a motion to approve the overnight and/or out-of-state field trips.
I'll motion that.
I have a question about that.
Okay, we'll hold that motion. What's your question?
The middle school is going to Brown County from the 18th through the 20th, which I think is lovely, but it doesn't say where they're spending the night or anything. It just says that they're going from the 18th through the 20th. Can you tell us a little more about that?
That was in the bus request.
Just the bus request?
Was, I think it,
Okay. Okay, thanks.
My daughter attended one of those, and it's a lot of fun, and they rent a little cabin. So,
I just wanted to know that.
yeah, I'm not sure exactly whether it's one of the state cabins or private, but they rent a little place, and they have the whole little house to themselves.
Just wanted to know.
Is it on the park property?
Are you okay to move forward with?
I don't
motion?
think this one's on the park property because it's its own little, I think it's more of a private place.
So Aaron made a motion to approve. Is there anyone that can second that motion?
I will second that motion pending the information coming from the middle school.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now we need a motion to approve the fundraiser request.
Selling butter braids.
What is it?
I'll move for that.
Thank
It's
you.
Selling butter braids. It's
Butter braids.
It's like breadsticks.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they're-
I thought it
Yeah.
was a hairstyle
No.
thing.
Yeah, it sounds like hairstyle, but no, it's like some kind of braided threads that has.
This isn't my way.
The choir's done it several times. It's very good.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Aaron. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Let's move on to enrollment and capacity. We need a motion, but first I think we have some
Yeah,
information.
basically it's on the corner of your desk, the updated stuff. I'll try to go through it quickly. I did not update this from last week, but we're down another 4 kids. We're down 125, which is just extremely unusual. So I kind of combined asking for the capacity. I think our principals and teachers would say they love the lower enrollment. We all love the lower enrollment, but the finances are a little bit challenging, and I'll talk about those in a second. But I lowered the K through 3. I did a survey of Marion County SUPs and asked them, what are you doing in your K through 3 buildings? They're trying to keep it at 25. So I lowered ours to that. Traditionally, in grades 4, 5, and 6, you'll see class size go up. But more importantly, our class average, if you look at column I, kindergarten is 22.7, first grade 24.9, which is wonderful. Second and third grade 23 and 24, 4, 5, and 6, 24, 24, and 26. Middle school, it's really tough to do middle school just because of how the schedule in the high school, but it's up there. Seventh grade is an anomaly. If you want to look at the numbers, we had a huge influx of in-district students last year in 6th grade, and they didn't leave. You know, we didn't take hardly any 7th graders at all, Tom, did we, this year? Any transfer kids? Very few.
Very few.
And so, but it's just one of those classes, we hope it holds true. If you go down to the bottom, again, one of your sheets, and I probably won't go through that tonight because the budget took a lot of time, but I'd really encourage you to go take, yours is a shorter version, take your numbers and really look at the history of all this. You know, some grade levels, we went up in enrollment on Beach Grove kids, and others we went down. It's an interesting history to take some time and study this. But again, I'm not going to go through it tonight. I'll be glad to talk about it in greater detail at the next meeting, but this is a history back to '05. We're down. And Krista asked, well, why? We're down throughout Marion County with the exception of Perry Township and Franklin Township. All the other school districts are down. And that is a trend. None of us know why.
What about the parochial schools?
You know, I can tell you from what I know,
Only name, Mr. Kitchens was telling me they were down also.
yes, yeah. It depends on which one you're at. If you're St. Barnabas or St. Jude, they have plenty of kids. You get toward the inner city, and they're like everybody else, they're fighting for kids. And on this document, I will bring it back to you once ADM is over, so we can really look at what school districts, setting school districts, we had changes. We don't know that data yet. We haven't taken time to look at that, but you know, Franklin Township was 118, IPS 714, Perry's 194. One of the things we think is the early childhood centers in Perry Township are keeping kids there. But we'll plug that number in. I'll bring it back at the next meeting to look at.
I would love to see the numbers for
Yeah.
Triton Central, because you Triton and New Pal.
Yeah, yeah,
I bet you those numbers have exploded, just
Yeah.
because the housing and everything
Yeah.
has exploded.
yeah. I could make some phone calls and find out. From a fiscal standpoint, you know, last year we were 3215. As of today, we're 3,090. That's a loss of $781,000 in change. But Tom mentioned new money. You know, the state does a 2-year buy-in budget, and April talked about that. This spring, they'll do a 2-year buy-in budget for the 1920 and 2021 school years and everybody else. So we're going to sit back and see what that does for us. But the bottom line, as of today, we're down about almost $600,000. Now, don't panic. We've had some other areas, we've had some positive changes, we'll work through it. We'll see what the legislators put on the table for the spring and come back with some more detailed plans. So we're rock solid, but you know, we don't have an answer to this, but, and our numbers will go down between now and Friday, they always do. For example, we had 4 kids at the crossing that have never shown up. Well, the crossing hadn't taken them off the books yet, so we took them off yesterday, so now we're down at 21, but yet we had 2 or 3 parents show up yesterday and today. So, you know, pardon me? Yeah, so those numbers are not included in here. Could go up a little bit, but we'll kind of work through it, so.
So what is this motion actually asking us to?
It sets the general class size, the capacity,
Okay.
which is column H. As you can see, we're way under capacity.
Column H is what we're.
Yeah, you're approving column H, which is the capacity.
Okay.
And again, I dropped the K1 because we're just committed to keep those numbers in K3 down as much as we can. You know, there's that balance between, you know, taking kids and not taking kids, but we took every kid that met our requirements from a transfer standpoint. Some were not taken because of attendance and discipline. I will tell you, we also booted out about 25 kids last spring for attendance and behavior. It's just the principals went through and they said, you're not coming back. And we have lists now, they're telling parents that your attendance is bad. So I'm not sure our class size is going to go up much larger moving forward because we've kind of drawn a line in the sand and say, they changed the law that said we can kick out because of attendance. And so we've done that across the board. So that also is, you know, that's a lot of money, but the bottom line, it also affects test scores and it sends a strong message if you're going to come to school here. And people in the neighborhood say, well, you know, hey, Beech Grove is not just letting you stay, so maybe other people are not coming, not applying.
Well, their little brother, little sister doesn't come either.
That's
so
right, yeah.
there's 2 instead of
Yeah,
just 1.
and the bottom line, it's interesting as you study the data. I won't go through it tonight, but I encourage you to get your magnifying glass out and look at it. But I'll bring it back with some more data at the next meeting. So we're just asking you to set that capacity for us moving forward.
Thank you, Bev. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Janice. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Let's move on to our policy and guideline considerations.
If you look up at the screen, I had sent this out to you earlier. And we had requested that we consider some changes to this. I believe it was April that gave us some good feedback on the school policy, or was it Jill? I think it was April. So we added this in. We have I know the concern is that, you know, you open up Pandora's box, but I think,
Yeah, I wanted to clarify, I wasn't saying that I wasn't supporting.
No, not at all.
This particular, but in
Yeah.
the future, if we did it for someone and then they
yes.
robbed a bank next year, I would like to take that name away.
Well,
And
Papa
not
John's
like
right
Butler,
now,
Or I mean, Purdue and Ball State.
Yes.
Got into a pickle.
yeah, so I think it was a great addition,
Papa John's.
and so we would ask that you would approve the policy change.
I think we approve the policy change.
Okay, thank you, Beth.
I'll second.
Thank you, Janice. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we have another motion.
I'll make a motion to name the basketball court at the high school in honor of Matt English.
I will second that.
Wait a minute, I have a question. I thought we were naming the gym after him.
No, we
Instead
said
of
the
just
basketball court.
floor.
Traditionally, for example, you look at Purdue and places like that, they, you know, they name the floor, not the gym itself. Well, at the university, they do, sometimes they do a gym. It also gives us an opportunity for sponsorship down the road we're working on, but, you know, but we ask for the floor. And you've got a copy of that with you. And once we have a motion, I have something I'd like to read if I could, once the motion is completed.
Yeah.
Second the motion.
Janice, you want a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And I appreciate our architect moving very quickly on this. And I'll come up here. Can I have some of the whole sign? Matt English came to us 10 years ago. Ironically, it was a late summer hire. Randy Bales decided to retire. And thanks to Mr. Bear for going to the middle school to work with Mr. Gerhardt, we had a science opening. From day one, Matt was and is a master teacher for us. His expectations of the classroom were high. His expectations on the athletic endeavors were equally as high. So he began in August of 2008, and his emphasis has always been we before me. And if you look at the small picture of the court you have in front of you, on the home side, working with Angela, you'll see that it'll be Matt English court, we before me, and then we'll get his real signature. That's not his real signature. Actually, I'll probably go up and get that from Angela tomorrow or Thursday. And it's no secret that Matt loves what he does. If you're around as much, his passion is just uncalled for. He loves basketball, but he loves his kids even more than basketball. He wants his boys to not only win games, but to win at life. He's often expressed his wish that when his players go out to the world, he wants them to be the best men they can be, the best friend they can be, the best father they can be, the best husband they can be, whether they go to college and play basketball, stay close to home and start a career family. Matt believes that for his players, when they step foot on the basketball court at Beech Grove High School, the journey begins here. And you'll see on the opposite side, the quote will be, the journey begins here. That's exactly what happens when Matt works with his players and students and staff. He's taken our athletic department to a new level in the expectations. And I think our players, by winning and losing, unfortunately, we haven't, we've been this close to sectional championships. But that's not the important thing. It's the young men that he has developed and the people around us that he has made me more successful in life. So it's with great pleasure. And I'll make sure Angela knows that she can watch this. I should have told they could see it streamed in, but we'll make sure he watches it, and I'll take this up to him. I have 2 copies made, one to keep in our office and one to take to Matt for his family. You know, I was going to hesitate on calling Matt, telling Matt until this was done, but Angela called me last Thursday and said Matt wanted to see me. And so myself and Dave Rather and Bill, we went up to see him, and he was not taking people coming in to see him in the hospital until last week. And Angela told me that, and I let her tell him last Thursday. I said, hey, listen, we made a recommendation to the board. It's going to hopefully be approved on Tuesday. I want you to tell Matt. And she told me 48 hours later, that's the happiest he's been over the last month. And so, you know.
Can I have an unveiling of some sort
Yes.
of cool ceremony?
So what we're doing, thank you, Janice, thank you, it's a great anticipatory set. So Steve and is working with Cincinnati Floor, and our goal is that, and thanks to the generosity of Dr. Keeley and the budget, we will resurface the floor. The whole thing will be redone now. We have some different ideas that maybe this will be all black around the outside, and there's different things that sometimes they color in the court, sometimes they color in the paint, different things. So we'll work with Matt on what he wants on that. But this is what the architect put together for me very quickly, which I think is really cool how it looks.
Will we be able to get this completed quickly?
Yes.
Yeah, I spoke to the gentleman yesterday. He was supposed to have a quote for me tonight. Haven't got it yet, but he said he could have, Liz was working with her coaches, and she believes that we can have it done by fall break. It's about a 3 to 4 week project.
We have a home volleyball game. The last home volleyball game is like October, next Wednesday, 4th. So we're hoping the next day we start on it. You know, the other thing, we could move the volleyball game to the auxiliary gym or the middle school gym, but we also want to be fair to the girls. That's their home court. And then what we've talked to Angela about is on November 24th. It's our first home game. And
The girls or the guys?
the guys, Saturday. We basically see it at home. It's over Thanksgiving break, so it's a good time. We'd like to invite all the former players back, and we'll start working on that to do that. I meet with Mark James tomorrow, and Mark and Matt were very, very close. Mark worked with us, and I'm going to ask Mark tomorrow if he'll be the MC for that. And, you know, Mark, if you don't know, is the voice of the 500, plus he was just on the NASCAR race yesterday, and he was a lot more exciting than some of those other people. But so I'm going to talk to Mark tomorrow and see if he can help organize that. He has a lot of connections, and so on the 24th we will have the grand, you know, dedication on that night. So, pardon me, November 24th. So, and obviously they'll practice on it before then if it's done, but that's kind of our game plan. So I want to personally thank you and the board for making this step. There's not anybody I've ever been in education who's more deserving for what he's done for kids, and what he'll hopefully, God willing, he'll continue doing for kids. So staying optimistic and saying a lot of prayers for the English family. And Angela English is one of the strongest people I've ever been in my life. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about that moving forward later on. So thank you, Mr. Gerhart. I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you, Melanie, for your hard work with this also.
Well, let's move into success stories, and I'll start this evening. This is what I love about Beech Grove. I love that the community comes together and supports one of their own during a health crisis or whatever is going on in their lives. So just thankful for that.
Yeah, I agree 100% with Krista. I think there's, you know, so deserving of what we're going to move forward with. We have, I think our whole community has rallied together and shown great support for Matt and his family. And the next home football game, I will wear a standing tall shirts and continue to keep them surrounded with lots of prayers, lots of hugs, and just the difference they have made in our community. Matt especially, because he is the big one. He has just touched so many lives, whether it be young, old. He just has that way with him, and not a lot of people have that. But you know, of course he loves the boys that play basketball for him, but you know, he may see a struggling student, and he kind of can just tell that struggling student that, you know, maybe they just need a good word, and that's one thing that, you know, we'll always be thankful for with Matt, that he can sense that. So those are happy ones.
I have another success story, and I brought her up before, but I say it again. Last week on PBS, Shannon Neward was focused. First one of 3 kids.
Yeah, Virtual Nation.
Road Trip Nation, that's what it's called, yeah. And she was delightful.
Yep.
I
Good
don't know if
kid.
anybody else caught it, but it was.
I'm trying to put the link in the Smart Blast this week.
It was just really good, and it wasn't really about her, but it talked about where she was from in our neighborhood, and she and 2 other guys, all from Purdue, went on an RV road trip around Indiana and talked about all the different.
That was in the Southside Times, I think.
Yeah, it
too.
was, and then they talked about all the different careers that are potentially possible in biosciences and agriculture and everything, which totally just ties back to everything we start doing here with our FFA and science program, and I feel like it was a success story. I was just so proud of her. I was like, oh.
And she's
Like
working.
she was in 3rd grade, it was just cute.
And she's working in Arkansas now.
Yes, teaching.
And teaching.
Yes.
But food, nutrition and about food deserts and all that, so it's really all
So
ties
someday I
together.
hope that she wants to come teach here, but.
Well, Shannon was part of the first kids we sent to science camp many years ago with Joe Pick, right, the youngest, Joe and Michael Jennings and those guys. And we've continued to send kids to that science camp.
Yeah,
So,
Michael's in med school now.
yeah, so a lot of positives from that.
I agree.
My success stories are, Fall Festival starts Wednesday. Tomorrow, yeah, tomorrow through Saturday. So hopefully everybody will come in. I think I signed up and stepped to the thing on Saturday to be there.
Yep.
So that, and I would also like to congratulate Rob Chalice on his victory. That hasn't been voted on yet. There were 3 positions open, and he stepped up and said that he would like to be on the board, so he's going to be on the board. And I know we still have Krista for several more months, but I can't express my gratitude in her leadership. She's done a fantastic job, and I hope that I'm half the board member that she is.
Pleasure. All right, with that, are we ready to adjourn? Can I have a motion to adjourn this evening?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Jill.
And we truly have about 5 minutes, and we are canceling.